Michael wants to grow indoor plants. He lives in a small apartment with plain white walls, a quiet corner, and just one window that lets in the morning sun. One day, while scrolling through pictures on his phone, Michael saw a cozy living room filled with plants. One in particular caught his eye. It stood tall in the sunlight, bright green and beautiful, like it belonged there. The whole space looked happy and peaceful because of that plant. Right then and there, Michael decided he wanted that feeling too. He wanted to grow something green and alive, something that would make his space feel warm and full of life. There was just one problem. Michael didn't know anything about plants. He didn't know what kind to get. He didn't know how much light plants need. He didn't even know how often to water one. Still, even with no knowledge, he was ready to try. So let's take a journey together and help him learn about indoor plant care. Michael's journey started at a small neighborhood plant shop. As he stepped through the door, the air felt cool and smelled fresh, like a garden after it rains. All around him were plants of every size and shape. Some were tiny and leafy, others had huge green leaves that looked like umbrellas. Some sat quietly in pots, while others climbed tall shelves or dangled from the ceiling. Michael felt amazed and a little lost. He had no idea what to choose, but he did something smart. He walked up to the shop owner and asked, "Which one is the easiest to take care of?" That one simple question made a big difference. Picking the right plant is the first and most important step to being a good plant parent. Some plants need lots of care, others are more independent and don't mind a little neglect. For someone just starting out, choosing a plant that matches your space and lifestyle helps you succeed. Choosing the wrong one can make things hard before you even begin. The shop owner pointed out a few great options for beginners' plants that don't need too much water, can handle different types of light, and won't give up easily. After hearing the suggestions, Michael picked a snake plant. It had strong, straight leaves that stood tall like green swords. It didn't need a lot of attention and could live even in low light. He smiled as he carried it home. "Okay?" he said to himself. "Let's do this." Back in his apartment, Michael set his new plant on a table. It looked nice, but something didn't feel right. He remembered the shop owner's words, "Make sure it gets the right light." That made him stop and think, where was the best spot? Light is like food for plants. Without enough light, a plant can't grow, but too much sunlight can hurt it, just like it can hurt our skin. Some places in a room get strong sunlight, while others stay dim and cool. Finding the right spot is one of the secrets to helping plants thrive. Michael began checking the light around his apartment. In the morning, the table by his window was filled with sunlight. At noon, the sunlight moved away and became softer. In the evening, the far corner stayed shady. Michael tried a simple trick he found online. He held up a piece of white paper in different spots. If the sunlight made a clear, dark shadow on the paper, that meant it was direct light. If the shadow looked fuzzy and soft, it was indirect light. If there was barely any shadow at all, it was low light. After testing a few places, he found a perfect spot right beside the window. Bright, but not too bright. He gently moved the snake plant to that place, and it instantly looked more at home. Michael felt proud. He didn't just guess, he figured it out. That night, he sat beside it and smiled. The plant didn't say anything, but it looked a little happier. Maybe that was just Michael's imagination, but it felt like the first little success. The next morning, Michael looked at his snake plant and thought, maybe it's thirsty. So he gave it some water. The next day, he did the same thing. And then the day after that, by the end of the week, the plant's leaves started to look soft and droopy. Some even turned yellow. Michael was confused. He had given it water every day. Shouldn't it be growing? What Michael didn't know was that overwatering is one of the most common mistakes new plant owners make. It's easy to think that more water equals more care, but that's not true. Plants like the snake plant don't need water every day. In fact, too much water can hurt them. The roots can drown, the leaves can rot, and the plant can get sick. Michael had given his plant too much love and too much water. So How do you know when a plant needs water? Michael learned to check the soil first. He pressed his finger into the dirt, about 1 inch deep. If it felt dry, then it was time to water. If it still felt damp, the plant didn't need anything yet. He also learned to pick up the pot. When the soil was dry, the pot felt lighter. When it was wet, it felt heavy. That was another way to tell. Slowly, he was learning to listen not with his ears, but with his hands and eyes. Michael also found out how to water the right way. He started using room temperature water, not cold from the tap. He poured the water slowly, watching as it soaked the soil and gently dripped out from the bottom. That meant the roots were getting enough, and there wasn't too much left sitting at the bottom. If water stayed in the saucer under the pot for too long, he would pour it out. That kept the roots safe. Some people like to water their plants from the bottom by placing the pot in a shallow tray of water and letting the roots soak it up. Michael thought that sounded interesting and made a note to try it one day, but for now, top watering worked fine as long as he didn't do it too often. A few days later, Michael looked at his snake plant again. The yellow leaves were gone and new ones had started to grow. The plant stood tall and proud. Michael named it Spike. Things were going so well that one of Michael's friends gave him another plant, a small pothos with long vines already starting to trail over the edge of the pot. Michael was thrilled. He looked at the thin plastic pot. It came in and thought, this is too small. I should repot it. So he found a bigger pot and went outside to grab some dirt from his backyard. He placed the pothos in its new home and waited, but something was wrong. The next day, the leaves looked droopy and sad. Michael had done everything right, or so he thought. That's when he learned that not all dirt is the same. Outdoor soil is heavy and holds water too long. It can even carry bugs or weed seeds. Indoor plants need something special called potting mix. Potting mix is fluffy and light. It lets air reach the roots and drains water quickly, while still holding just enough moisture to keep the plant happy. Some potting mixes even come with little white pieces called perlite, which help water move through the soil. Others use coconut fiber or compost to give the plant a healthy boost. Michael went to the store and bought a small bag of indoor potting mix made for houseplants. He gently removed the pothos from the garden soil and gave it another chance in the right mix. Within a few days, the plant perked up again. The leaves looked shinier. It even started to grow a new vine. Michael felt like a real plant parent. Now, he gave this plant a name to Patty. Then, one afternoon, Michael saw something that caught his eye. A shiny, clear glass pot at the store. It looked fancy and beautiful. He thought it would be perfect for Patty, but when he brought it home, he noticed something was missing. There was no hole at the bottom. He looked at the pot, then back at Patty. Would this be okay? Michael had learned something else important. Pots need drainage holes. When you water a plant, the extra water needs to escape. If it doesn't, the roots stay too wet. They can start to rot, and soon the plant will get sick. That's why pots with holes at the bottom are best, especially for beginners. Michael didn't want to take any chances, so he found a solution. He kept Patty in her plastic pot with holes and placed that pot inside the pretty glass one. This way, he could still enjoy the look of the fancy pot while making sure Patty stayed safe and healthy. Now, Michael had to plant Spike and Patty, and both were growing strong. He knew how to pick plants that were beginner-friendly. He knew where to place them to get the right amount of light. He knew how to water them carefully and what kind of soil to use. And he even understood how pots could make a big difference. Each day, Michael checked on his plants. He noticed small changes, like new leaves forming or the way they turned toward the sun. These little signs told him that he was doing a good job. And that made him feel proud not just of his plants, but of himself too. Michael's journey with plants was only just beginning. In the next part, he'll learn how to feed his plants with the right fertilizer, how to handle changes in temperature and humidity, and how to keep them looking their best with gentle pruning and care. There's still so much more to discover. But for now, Michael is off to a great start. Michael woke up early, just as the soft morning light filled his small apartment. The first thing he did was check on Spike and Patty. Spike, his tall and strong snake plant, still stood proudly in the corner. Patty, his pothos with curling grain vines, had grown to new leaves overnight. Michael smiled. It felt good to care for something and watch it grow. But as he looked closer, he started to wonder, how do I help them grow faster and stay strong? He remembered hearing someone say, plants need food too. That made him pause. He watered them, gave them light, and used good soil. But what about food? Do plants really eat? The answer is yes, kind of. Plants make their own food using sunlight, air, and water through a process called photosynthesis. But they also need extra nutrients, just like people need vitamins to stay healthy. That's where fertilizer comes in. Fertilizer gives plants the nutrients they might not get from soil alone, especially when they live in pots. In nature, fallen leaves and rain add nutrients to the ground. But in a pot, soil stays the same for a long time. After a while, it loses its power to help the plant grow. That's why feeding your plants the right fertilizer makes a big difference. Michael went to the garden store again and found a long shelf filled with bottles, bags, and boxes. There were numbers and words he didn't understand. Some said organic, some said liquid, and some had numbers like the 10th of October 10. It felt confusing at first, but then he remembered something. Just start simple. He picked up a bottle of all-purpose liquid fertilizer made for houseplants. The label said it was balanced and safe for most indoor plants. He read the instructions carefully. It said to mix a small amount into water and use it once every 2 to 4 weeks during the growing season, which is spring and summer. Michael followed the directions, mixed the fertilizer with water, and gave Spike and Patty a gentle drink. The next week, something exciting happened. Patty's vines grew even longer, and her leaves looked shinier than before. Spike grew a new shoot from the center. Michael was amazed. Just a little bit of plant food had made such a big difference, but he also learned not to overdo it. Too much fertilizer can burn a plant's roots and hurt it. It's better to give too little than too much. When in doubt, go slow. As the days passed, summer turned into fall, and the air started to feel cooler. Michael noticed something else. His plants weren't growing as fast. Patty's vines seemed to pause. Spike just stayed still. That made Michael wonder again, what's going on. He looked up some answers and learned about humidity and temperature. Indoor plants come from all over the world. Some, like the pothos, come from tropical rainforests where it's warm and humid all year long. Others, like cacti, come from dry deserts. In a house or apartment, the air can change with the seasons. Heaters in winter can make the air very dry. Air conditioners in summer can make it too cold. These changes can stress your plants and make them unhappy. Michael learned that most indoor plants like temperatures between 65 and 75 degrees Fahrenheit. They don't like sudden changes. If it gets too cold or too hot too fast, they can drop leaves or stop growing. That's why it's best to keep plants away from heaters, air vents, or cold windows. But temperature wasn't the only thing. There was also humidity, the amount of moisture in the air. In tropical places, the air is often full of water. That's what plants like Patty were used to. But in Michael's apartment, the air was getting dry, especially in the fall. So what could he do? He tried a few easy tricks. First, he grouped his plants together. When plants are near each other, the moisture from their leaves helps create a small humid space. Next, he placed a shallow tray of water and pebbles under the pots, but not touching the bottom. As the water slowly evaporated, it made the air around the plants more comfortable. He even tried spraying a light mist of water onto the leaves with a small spray bottle, especially in the morning. After a few days, Michael noticed the leaves stopped drooping and started looking more alive again. It wasn't magic, it was just paying attention and giving plants the kind of environment they loved. By now, Michael felt like he had learned a lot. He had chosen the right plants, given them good light, figured out how to water, picked the best soil, fed them just enough. and even fix the air around them. But there was one more thing he hadn't tried yet: pruning and grooming. One day, Michael saw a leaf on Patty that was turning yellow. At first, he panicked. Was something wrong? Was she getting sick? But when he looked closer, he realized it was just an old leaf. Sometimes, leaves get old and die. That's part of the plant's life. It doesn't always mean something is wrong, but it's still a good idea to remove them. Michael gently pinched the yellow leaf off near the base. It came off easily. Patty didn't look sad, she actually looked cleaner. That's when he learned that pruning helps a plant stay healthy. It gives more energy to the growing parts and keeps the plant from wasting strength on dying leaves. He also noticed that some of Patty's vines were growing long and thin without many leaves. He read that by trimming the ends of the vines, he could encourage the plant to grow more leaves and become fuller. It felt scary at first to cut part of his plant, but he used clean scissors and gave it a try. A few days later, new leaves started popping out near the cut. It worked. Pruning isn't just about cutting leaves. It's also about watching your plant closely and helping it grow in the right direction. If a vine is growing too long or bending toward the floor, you can trim it to keep it tidy. If your plant looks crowded, you can remove extra leaves to let in more light. If there's dust on the leaves, gently wiping them with a soft, damp cloth helps the plant breathe better. Dust can block light and make it harder for plants to stay healthy. Michael started making plant care part of his weekly routine. Every Sunday, he took a few minutes to check the leaves, clean them, remove anything old, and give the plants a little attention. It wasn't a chore, it became something he looked forward to. As he trimmed, misted, or fed his plants, he felt calm. It was a quiet moment in his busy week. After a month of this new routine, Michael's apartment looked different, not because he changed the furniture or painted the walls. It was the plants. Spike was taller. Patty's vines now hung gently across the shelf. They made the room feel warm and alive. Friends who visited noticed it too. They asked, "How do you keep your plants looking so good?" Michael smiled and said, "I just learned what they like." His journey still wasn't over, though. There were still more things to explore, like how to deal with pests, what to do when a plant gets sick, and how to grow new plants from cuttings. But for now, Michael had learned how to feed his plants with care, adjust to the changing seasons, and gently shape their growth. He didn't start as an expert. He started as a beginner, and look how far he had come. Michael was watering Patty one quiet Saturday morning when he noticed something strange. Tiny black specks were crawling around the top of the soil. At first, he thought it was just dirt. But when he leaned closer, he saw them moving. His heart sank. Were those bugs? He quickly checked the leaves and stems. There were tiny white spots and something that looked like dust, but it wasn't dust. This was something new. Something wrong. Michael felt a little worried. He had done so much to keep his plants healthy. How could there be bugs? This is where many new plant parents give up, but not Michael. He had come too far. So he took a deep breath and did what he always did when something didn't make sense. He started learning. It turns out, even healthy plants can sometimes get pests. The most common ones are tiny insects like fungus gnats, spider mites, aphids, and mealybugs. They're small, but they can cause big trouble if you don't catch them early. The black specks Michael saw were fungus gnats. They often show up when the soil stays too wet. They lay eggs in the top layer of soil, and the baby gnats feed on plant roots. It's a good reminder that even when you're careful, overwatering can invite bugs. Michael learned that the best way to fight fungus gnats is to let the soil dry out between watering. Dry soil makes it harder for them to survive. He also sprinkled a thin layer of sand on top of the soil, which kept the gnats from laying more eggs. It worked. After a few days, there were fewer bugs. After a week, they were gone. But what if it had been something worse, like spider mites or mealybugs? Michael learned to check for signs like sticky leaves, tiny webbing, or strange white fluff. If he saw any of these, he could wipe the leaves with a damp cloth or spray a gentle mix of water and mild soap. There were also natural sprays he could buy from the plant shop. He needed extra help. Now he knew pests aren't the end of the world. If you stay calm, act fast, and take care of your plant, it can bounce back. Later that week, Michael noticed another problem. Patty had a yellow leaf again. But this time, the plant wasn't drooping. The soil wasn't wet and there were no bugs. So what was wrong? He looked it up and discovered something important. Not all yellow leaves are bad. Sometimes a leaf turns yellow because it's old. Plants naturally drop old leaves to make room for new ones. It doesn't always mean trouble, but sometimes yellow leaves can mean a bigger problem like too much light, too little water, or even low humidity. It's all about learning to read the signs. Michael started paying more attention. If a leaf turned yellow at the bottom of the plant and the rest looked fine, it was probably just old. But if the whole plant started to look pale, it might need more sunlight or a little fertilizer. If leaves turned brown at the tips, the air might be too dry. He even learned that if the leaves curled or dropped suddenly, it could be because of the big change in temperature. Troubleshooting isn't about guessing. It's about observing, being patient, and remembering what your plant likes. By now, Michael felt confident. He could handle watering, lighting, feeding, trimming, and even bugs. He was no longer a beginner. He was something else now, someone who understood his plants. Then one day, he saw something online that made his eyes widen. It was a picture of the pothos cutting growing roots in a glass jar of water. Just a vine sitting in water, no soil land. It was growing a whole new plant. Michael was amazed. Could he really grow more plants without buying them? Yes, he could. This process is called propagation, and it's one of the most fun parts of plant care. You take a small piece of a healthy plant and help it grow into a brand new one. Michael grabbed his scissors, made sure they were clean, and carefully cut a vine from Patty. He chose one that had at least one little bump on the stem. That bump is called a node, and it's where roots grow from. He placed the cutting in a small glass jar filled with clean water and set it near a window with bright, indirect light. Every day, he checked the jar. After a week, he saw something tiny and white coming from the node, a root. He couldn't believe it. A few days later, more roots appeared. He felt proud. He had made something new. Once the roots were about 2 inches long, Michael planted the cutting in fresh soil. He watered it gently and gave it a spot next to the original Patty. He named the new plant Peppy. From one pothos, he now had 2. Michael began to try propagation with other plants too. Some worked in water, others needed to go straight into soil. Some, like the snake plant, could grow from just one leaf. The more he practiced, the more confident he became. Plant care wasn't just a hobby anymore. It was something that brought him joy, peace, and even creativity. Michael learned something else important during this journey. You don't have to be perfect. Plants are living things. Sometimes they grow fast. Sometimes they slow down. Sometimes they surprise you with a new leaf. And sometimes they struggle. That's okay. Caring for plants is not about doing everything exactly right. It's about noticing, about being gentle, about giving a little time and patience each week. Michael now had 5 plants: Spike, Patty, Peppy, and 2 new friends he had picked up from a local plant swap. He had a small watering can, a spray bottle, scissors, and a little notebook where he wrote down what he learned. His home felt different now. Not just because it looked greener, but because it felt calmer, cozier, like the plants had become part of the space and part of him. He often sat near his plants while reading a book or listening to music. Sometimes he just watched the leaves dance in the light. That simple, quiet feeling made it all worth it. If someone had told him months ago that he would grow a mini jungle in his apartment, he wouldn't have believed them. But he did, not by being perfect, but by starting, learning, and not giving up. So here's what Michael wants you to know. Anyone can grow indoor plants, even if you've never touched soil before, even if you forget to water sometimes. Even if your first plant didn't make it. Start small. Pick one plant, learn what it needs, put it near a window. Give it some water and time, watch it grow, then Try another over time, you'll understand more. You'll notice things you didn't see before. And one day, someone will ask you, how do you keep your plants looking so good? And you'll smile just like Michael did and say, I just learned what they like.